Today is August 6th edition of Back Roads of Illinois. We were Central Illinois agriculture source, and in the Midwest alongside in Central Illinois agriculture, we were glad you're here. All right, I am glad to join with you guys on today's program. We're having a jam-packed show on today's show for Back Roads of Illinois. This time is serious business for your agricultural news for today. Hurricane Debbie, the economy, yield tour. Hurricane Debbie hitting in the southeast coast. The hurricane is in Florida, southern Georgia, Carolinas. Debbie was impacting the coast of Florida. There have been a lot of heavy rain in Tampa Bay area, Big Bend of Florida and Georgia. There was no specifically damage. The economy in general is no good for yesterday. However, the grain market are down for yesterday's close. The stock market was plummet to the Federal Reserve announcement of the inflation situation in the United States and job market. We saw Dow Jones finished in down 8 points in New York. The yield tour are playing in for right now with private tour like Pro Farmer Crop Tour and DTN Crop Tour in central Illinois and across the Midwest. The tour is running through this month and starts the harvest season. We're back with our guest Tom Bachmann from Prairie Farmers and Kevin Gow, Hope Commodities. Stay tuned on Back Roads of Illinois. Today, we were joining with Tom Bachmann from Prairie Farmers in Illinois and Indiana. Tom is in the state of Indiana. We were talking about the corn crop in the Eastern Corn Belt. Welcome to the show. How are you today? Tom.
Hi, I'm doing fine, Cesar. It's very hot over here today. We'll probably have one of our hottest days of the summer, over 90 and probably over 100 heat index. But most places in Indiana, at least, we still have good moisture. A little short in part of Ohio, but we're pretty good here yet.
Let's start with our conversation about updating on crop progress in the Eastern Corn Belt.
This year's a little bit different because of the delayed. We got planted early in really in Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, Michigan, Kentucky. And then there was a delay, especially in Indiana and Ohio. And then a lot of it got in later, late May. So, and some even into early June. So the crops spread out. And there's still, most of it is, pollinated and in grain fill. There's still some that's just getting to that point. But most of the crop is probably in that somewhere in the grain fill stage. Early milk stage is probably where a lot of it's at, and overall I think looks pretty good at this point.
Do you see a lot of weeds in central Indiana?
As far as weed issues, no, not really. I think we had enough rain that the early herbicides work fairly well. There's some weeds in soybeans, but really probably as good or better than normal weed control. I mean, we need to, what weeds are out there, this is the time they need to be, they need to do something to keep them from going to seed. That's something I'm actually kind of looking at for a story this week because, especially water hemp, that stuff goes to seed. You're just building a seed bank. And with resistance issues, that's not something that we want to do. So, if they're like long field edges or stuff, this is the time to keep them from going to seed. But overall, I don't think weed control was a big issue this year, at least not where I've seen.
Can you tell our listeners about your experience for this growing season with the weather?
Yeah, I don't actually farm myself, but I do work with a couple farmers that I watch fields and report on them weekly. The cornfield got planted the first week of May, and it's been pretty much off to the races. There was a 2-3 week dry spell in early June, but since then, this particular field's here in central Indiana, and since then it's got what it's needed to this point. The soybeans were planted about May the 10th or 11th, I believe, and they were and so far it's actually it's a field that can be irrigated because part of the field has gravel under it, but it's not been irrigated to this point. Another week or so it may be to that point, but with the soybeans, this grower, and I think a lot of people agronomists would agree, try to avoid irrigating early if at all possible, and he's not had to irrigate. He's had enough rainfall, but it's there, so we get into the next 2 or 3 critical weeks and it doesn't rain, he can add water. But so far so good over most of the area. Part of Ohio, especially central, western, southwest Ohio, is a little bit on the dry side. I think they got some relief in the last week, but still somewhat on the dry side.
How much have rained for this planting season?
I don't have what I've seen and people I've talked to, and I monitor a lot of reports coming from really the entire Midwest. There are pockets of disease issues. Southern rust in Nebraska in corn. There's some white mold concern, and where white mold is a problem because of the wet weather we've had during the season at times. Tar spot is definitely where tar spot's an issue, except for Illinois. Illinois doesn't seem to be quite as bad yet, but definitely in Indiana, Missouri, northern Missouri, parts of Nebraska, tar spot is there. One of the plant pathologists tells me it's similar to 2021. So guys are having to make decisions about whether to spray fungicide on corn that's going to be cheaper than normal or not. But beyond all that, I think we're set up to have what I've seen pretty decent corn and soybean crops, average or better, if we get especially for the soybeans. We need rain here in August. Still need some moisture for corn, but I think we're looking at average or better. In some fields, very good yields. The field I watch should be well over 200 bushel an acre for corn, and could be quite a bit over. So it all depends what happens here in the last part of the season.
Did you hear about some southern rust from the hurricane barrel in Illinois?
Yeah, I know there's concern about it, but people that I monitor, even as recently as the end of last week, still not a lot of it showing up. There's a little bit right in the south eastern tip of Illinois and southwestern tip of Indiana. There's a couple of counties in Indiana, Knox and Du Bois, where it's confirmed, but it hasn't taken off yet. I don't mean it won't. It's definitely something to monitor for, because the inoculum definitely could have got up here. But so far, it's been more of a problem showing up in, especially in Nebraska, eastern Nebraska, and Iowa, parts of Iowa. But there, in Nebraska, there's also a lot of common rust, and they say it can be a little bit hard to tell the two apart. So, but that's kind of what I'm seeing so far.
Do you have any final thoughts?
No, I think it's another year with I think what we're getting used to, some unusual weather, kind of fits and starts on the weather this year. Start out decent, then too wet, too dry, too wet in places again. Some places too dry, too hot. But overall, some places close to just right. And I think when it's all said and done, it's looking to me like I don't see a reason to not be an average corn crop and average bean crop or better yet at this point today. And that could change yet. But as we said here this morning, that's kind of what it looks to me.
Thanks, Tom. We enjoyed our conversation with you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
This is Tom Bachmann from Prairie Farmers in Indianapolis, Indiana, on back roads of Illinois. Welcome back to the show with us on back roads of Illinois. We were joining with Kevin Gall from Agri Gold for Central Illinois. Welcome to the show. How are you, Kevin?
I'm doing fantastic. Definitely enjoying the cooler weather today compared to the last few days.
Let's start with our conversation about this planting season and the growing season in Central Illinois.
Sure, we've had a definitely a long season this year, starting with planting, and the planting window actually took about 2 months to complete this year, with the onset of rainfall, the cooler conditions, and just getting the right environment to get this crop planted. But fortunately, we've come a long ways. A lot of this crop is now pollinated, and now we're well into grain fill here beginning of August. And there's been a lot of content around the crop conditions here in Illinois this year. We continue to see really good crops. When you look at the USDA crop progress report, the recent crop report came out about 81% good to excellent on the corn crop today, and 75% good to excellent on soybeans. So this crop is actually in really good shape, considering the year that we had, with the later planting windows. But there's a lot of things to be on the lookout for, going into grain fill. I know one big topic that we had is aphids. We had a lot of aphid colonies show up here over the last 3-4 weeks or so, and that's definitely been a concern, especially when you had 30, 40, 50% of plants covered with aphids. A lot of growers definitely had to go after those and kill some of that in the fields because of
How are they emerged, Kevin? Yes, sir.
Yeah, overall emergence has been all over the board. Obviously we got started planting in April, and it followed up with some heavier rain events, some cooler conditions, and emergence was a little bit challenged on some of the early planted corn. However, as you get into mid-May, conditions turned around and we had a lot better emergence overall, except in those environments that we had some heavy rainfall right after planting. Maybe emergence was affected some, especially on some lighter soil types, clay soil types, and no-till conditions. Those are the type of environments where we had a little bit less than desirable populations. And we saw that in soybeans as well, especially under no-till conditions, heavy residue, slowing down emergence overall in that crop.
How many of weeds on the field do you see any?
I tell you, with the warmer than normal conditions we had in May and June, and the rainfall we've had, weed pressure has definitely been a concern. Obviously with higher wind events and wet weather, we weren't able to get out and apply herbicides in a timely fashion. A lot of our weeds got away from us, got a little bit bigger than anticipated. And obviously those weeds are harder to kill as they get size, especially for hard to kill weeds like tall water hemp. And we're definitely seeing some escapes on water hemp, both in corn, but also soybeans. And a lot of growers have had to go back and respray, maybe with a second application of Liberty or glufosinate to try to get those under control. I continue to get some questions on even late applications of Liberty today, try to clean up some of these fields. Well, number one, you're not going to get very adequate coverage with a herbicide. And number two, you got to worry about harvest restrictions as well.
How about water hemp and pigweeds?
Yeah, water hemp is the devil. I mean, we've had a huge insurgence of water hemp growing in a lot of fields. And I think a lot of that had to do with our dry conditions a year ago. Obviously we had a less effect of our residuals because we didn't have enough water to activate them. So we had higher pressure a year ago in some of our cornfields, and it just snowballed into a challenge this year with heavier pressure, later applications of herbicides, and maybe some of these weeds not dying on the first application.
Can you tell our listeners about the yields for right now?
Yeah, from a yield perspective, in Illinois, the areas I cover, we're in pretty good shape. I think we've got a tremendous crop growing, and you can see that from the USDA's Illinois crop condition report released on Monday, the 5th of August. Corn conditions, 81% good to excellent. That's outstanding for this time of year. And soybeans at 75% good to excellent. So again, we've got a tremendous crop on our hands in Illinois. USDA, from the United States perspective, 68% good to excellent on corn, 67% on soybeans. So really good crop coming. And obviously the markets dictate that as well, or see that.
What is the forecast for Central Illinois?
The forecast for Central Illinois, as we look into August and September, it looks like we are going to cool down here over the next week to 10 days. And that's definitely an ideal time as we get into rapid grain fill. Of course, we've had a little bit of warmer conditions over the last week or so. However, moisture is not short. We have adequate moisture to withstand any higher temperatures that we've endured over the last week or so. So it really hasn't hurt us at all. I see this crop picking up a lot of moisture, nutrients, and continue to pack on yield over the next 30 to 40 days, especially on the earlier crop, and then the fuller season or later planted crop is going to take a little bit longer to fill.
Kevin, is there anything would you like to tell our listeners about this crop in central Illinois?
Yeah, I think overall in central Illinois, I think we've got a really good crop coming. One thing we need to continue to do is scout. Whether it be nitrogen deficiency from all the excessive rains we had early in the season, or disease pressure, especially as we continue to cool down here. We're probably going to start seeing some more disease show up with diseases like tar spot, maybe southern rust blowing in from southern areas. So we're not out of the woods yet as far as some potential issue showing up, whether it be aphids in corn, diseases like tar spot or southern rust. And then obviously we need to pay attention to nitrogen deficiency as well as we continue to fill grain.
Do you have any final thoughts?
As we get into maturity, black layer, continue to scout, making sure we're getting out there and harvesting this crop timely if we have issues. Obviously, where the commodity markets are today, a lot of growers will probably opt to leave this crop in the field to dry down the best it can. But we also need to make sure we're getting every bushel into the grain bin to maximize profits for the 24 corn crop.
Thanks, Kevin.
Thanks for the time.
This is Kevin Gall from Agri Gold on Back Roads of Illinois. We were coming back with Pope Commodities. We were joining with Logan Hartwig from Momentum Ag in Memphis, Tennessee. Welcome to the show. How are you today, Logan?
Hey, Cesar, doing well. We just enjoying the day, wrapping up things here down in Memphis. Plenty warm down here, and about to start kicking off harvest here before long.
Let's start with our conversation about crop insurance for your company.
Yeah, so our company is based out of Philadelphia. We're locally right here around the Mid-South. Our group is comprised in probably 6 or 7 different states. Me personally, I'm here in Memphis, right outside of Memphis, Tennessee, and Marion, Arkansas. Provide insurance for a number of different commodities, including cotton, corn, rice, soybeans, and wheat. Mainly are the 5 commodities that I myself insure.
How many years to work for crop insurance?
I've been in the crop insurance industry since 2018. Was my first year, so that would put me right at 5 years this year.
Can you tell our audience about you guys offer a premium for crop insurance from your firm?
Sure. We don't offer so much as a premium in price. The way that the crop insurance is priced is based on government subsidies going directly to the AIP. So most all crop insurance, when you're talking about federal crop insurance, is priced the same in each county and state. So there's no difference in price from one competitor to the other. I would say that maybe what we try and strive to do is keeping our farmers in the know about things that are affecting them and new things that are coming out each year. As you're aware, the federal crop insurance program it changes every year, and it's, based on where the market is, how much, revenue can be guaranteed on an acre, as well as the yield protection that goes with the crop insurance. So there's not a big difference, not a become important throughout the year. So those can vary from company to company, but as a whole, most of it is all pretty well the same price from county to county or
Are
company to
you
company.
working with the PLC or ARC?
Yes, I mean, I'm aware of what those are. Those are totally, those are, you know, not private, but different from crop insurance. Those are something that is dealt directly between RMA and the producer. Whether you sign up with ARC or PLC, your two options, each crop kind of has a better positioning with ARC versus PLC, when you're discussing, what those two products do. So that's something that I don't necessarily utilize. I don't sign people up in those programs. That like I said, that's separate from the crop insurance.
Do you see more crop damage by the Hurricane Beryl in Arkansas and the South?
I have not this year. That's typically something that we have every year is a risk of hurricane. I've seen some very good looking crops be wiped out this time of year due to some moisture coming up and heavy rains and this humidity and heat. When it's like this, and especially, we're susceptible this year with an earlier crop. So haven't seen just too much yet, but definitely got our eyes peeled for it.
Do you have any final thoughts?
No, sir. I appreciate your time, and
This is your commodity markets update on back roads of Illinois. Corn futures finished in up 3 to 4 cents. Soybean futures finished in up 3 to 5 cents. Wheat futures finished in up 8 to 10 cents. Now that we are going to talk about the livestock market for today on back roads of Illinois. Cattle futures finished in up 7 to 2 cents. Feeder cattle finished in up 4 to 6 cents. Lean hogs finished in up 7 to 8 cents. Crude oil finished in down 8 to 9 cents per barrel. Dow Jones finished in down 3 points. Thanks to Tom Bachmann and Kevin Hope Commodities. Thanks for listening for today's program on Back Roads of Illinois. You can listen to our show on YouTube and whenever you get your podcast. This has been Back Roads of Illinois.